My shop is not very big, and to answer those that are probably going to ask me in the comments, it's 13 feet wide and 27 feet long. And one of the bigger problems that I've had to deal with is lumber storage, and I fixed part of that by building the scrap wood cabinet that I have down in the front of my shop. But that doesn't take care of the longer stock, and basically what I've been doing is I've been leaning that up against the wall. So I figured it'd probably be a good idea to build a lumber rack for those longer pieces. But the typical lumber rack is a magnet for dust and it doesn't look good. And since I use my shop for video, I want everything to look at least reasonable, or at least that's my plan going forwards. I know it's looked pretty messy in the past. So I figured any lumber rack that I do make inside the shop would have to be covered in some way to keep the dust out and also to keep it looking fairly tidy. So the first thing that I need to do is to prep the stock for the lumber rack. And I'm going to be using 1/2-inch particle board for most of this, mainly because, first of all, it's cheap, and secondly, it takes paint well. And that's exactly what I want to do with this. I want to paint it to match the wall so it blends in better. I bought 4x8 sheets at the lumber store, but I had them cut in half there, which makes it a lot easier for me to handle. So I'm going to cut all of the pieces for the body of the rack 7.5 inches wide, and that simplifies things a lot when I go to put it together. The rack that I'm building is 10 feet long, so I need to join pieces together. So I'm cutting 6 full-length pieces, and then I'm going to cut pieces that are 24 inches to add to the end of the full-length pieces to stretch it out to the approximately 10 feet that I want. The 24-inch long pieces extend the shelves, but these sheets are 97 inches long, and that leaves me with 2 pieces that are just short of 25 inches. Then I'm going to cut to 24.5 to make the end caps for the cabinet. Now that I've got all the major parts cut, I can start putting it together. And the way this rack goes together is kind of unusual. I'm going to start by joining one of the back pieces to extend it that 10 feet. And I'm just going to do that with polyurethane construction adhesive on a butt joint like this. And to keep that from squeezing out of the back, I'm going to run a strip of tape on there. And then to hold those together temporarily, I'm going to use the hinges as mending plates, I guess you could say. And those will pull the joint in tight and hold it together until I get the top and bottom glued and nailed on. Another temporary measure is the way I'm going to be holding this upright so that I can attach the bottom and top to it. And to do that, I've cut a scrap of plywood that I'm going to temporarily fasten to the back with a couple of brads. And that'll hold the back so it's standing upright and also support the bottom and the top as I install them. Once again, I'm going to use a small hinge as a mending plate to hold this joint together. After I get the solid wood nosing on, I can take these off again. And then with the first U-shaped part assembled, I can put the other one together in exactly the same way. I've got one other thing I need to do with these before I can mount them up on the wall, and that's to add a solid wood edge on the front. And what that does is it covers the particle board so it makes it a bit more durable, and it also bridges the seam where the shelves are joined. So that adds quite a bit of strength there. I'm using some of my vintage lumber here to cut the nosing for the shelves. And once again, these are just going to get glued and nailed in place. And now with all the trim installed on the front edges, I can remove that temporary piece of plywood that I had in there as a support, and also take out all the hinges I was using to hold the seams together. Now that I have both of the individual shelf units put together, I can get them up on the wall. At first I need to locate them. I know how tall the whole thing is, and it's 24.5. I already cut the side panels for that, and I'm going to use one here to measure down from the bottom of my camera gantry. I don't want this lumber rack to interfere with that, so I'm going to use that as the guideline. I'm going to drop it down a 1/2 inch lower than that because I really want to have it up as high as it possibly can be as well. And now, since I'm going to be putting this up on the wall myself, I'm not going to put the whole thing together first. I'm going to put it up in pieces. So I'm going to make a bracket that goes on one end, and that'll give me a place to rest one end of the bottom shelf as I get it up in position. And then I've just got a stick at the other end that I can use as a prop to hold it up where it needs to be. And all I need to do is line it up with the marks I already made, and then drive screws into the studs. Now, before I put the other one up, I want to get the end panel on over closest to the door, and that'll give me something for the top unit to go against, so that I'll know it's in the right place. And to space this one up, I cut pieces of particle board that are the right height, and I nailed them into a kind of a T like this, so that they'll sit on the top of the lower unit. Now that that's up, I want to get the panel on the other end, except this time I'm going to fasten it to the top unit as well. To wrap up construction on the cabinet itself, all I need to do is add the trim to both end panels. And then, like I said, this thing is going to get painted on the outside anyway. So I'm going to get the first coat on right now, and I'll be able to give it the second coat tomorrow. Before wrapping up yesterday, I glued up the panel for the door. Basically what I had to do here was just add 24 inches to the end of the sheet to make it that 10 feet long. And I also gave some thought as to how I'm going to do this. And I've decided that the door needs to be in 2 pieces, so I'm ripping it so that there's a door at the bottom that's 8 inches high, and the one above that is about 16 inches high. And the one on top will open upwards, and the one on the bottom will open downwards. I very much like the cabinet itself. I'm going to be banding these doors in solid wood. Even though it's not strictly necessary, it does make it more durable, and it actually reinforces that seam that I have there. And that's just put together with biscuits and glue, so it's not amazingly strong. Now that I have all of the edge banding put on, I can put on the hinges, and there are going to be 3 on the top door and 3 on the bottom, 1 on each end, of course, and 1 in the middle. And I'm going to mount these a little bit differently. I'm going to put the barrel of the hinge on top of the door and put it on there kind of backwards. And that's so that the door will close tight against the cabinet without any big gap. Oh, you I want to use magnets to hold these doors closed. These are just normal ones that I got at the home center. And the magnet body gets screwed into the cabinet, so it's not in the way of anything. And then here's a trick for attaching the plate to the door. I'm going to use a piece of double-sided tape to stick it onto the door so there won't be any misalignment. Okay, with the easy door done, I can move on to the harder one, I guess you could say. And what makes it hard, of course, is that it's bigger, and I can't do it from the floor. So I have to get it up in position and then try to get up in the ladder with the screws to screw it in place. And hopefully everything goes right. But what I need to do now is I need to sand the surface of both doors, and I'm going to give them a coat of white paint inside and out. I'm painting the inside because if you want the doors to stay flat, they really should be sealed on both sides. Okay, that about wraps this one up. I need to let the paint dry on this first coat overnight before I give it another coat tomorrow. And then I'll be able to load it up. And who knows, at some point in the future, I may go the extra distance and paint my logo on there and really make it look neat. I had a scrap of particle board left over. And of course, the best way to get rid of scrap is to use it. So I'm going to do it here. I'm going to slip it in between these two middle shelves. And believe it or not, this will add quite a bit of strength to the construction because it wedges those shelves in between the back panels.